Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about this cohort. This is a brand new concept of how we are looking at engaging organizations. Obviously, we made some pivots due to COVID and all the remote work that's taking place, and a lot of what we were doing before was um, very conducive for that type of work. So everything that we offered was, in terms of the solutions of building a culture of good within an organization. Everything we built was built over the last 4 years with the intent that if we were to find someone within an organization that could champion culture or was already championing culture but needed a playbook, why don't we design something digitally that's do it yourself, fully, self-paced, and that's what we did. And that work was that worked very well. But what I noticed is in engaging with the clients that we were working with, most of them wanted more than just, for this amount of money, you get this digital, solution and platform, and it's video led and documents, and you go through it yourself. And it's similar to what you were saying, Melanie. There's fatigue within anything that you do within life, work. So over time, there would be, I don't know if the word is fatigue, but there would be a lack of momentum somewhere along the line, because doing culture work, as you know, is not, both of you, is not something that is, you just plug a program in and a month later out pops this, exceptional culture that everyone wants to work for. This is long work. It's work that takes time, commitment, dedication, but also requires an executable strategy. And that's really where we were able to, after building the solutions that we have, discovered we have something very executable that's missing in a lot of organizations. Because where do you start? What do you focus on? When you're looking at the culture, there's so many different moving parts and elements to it. Many times it feels very organic and otherworldly and out of touch. And how do we even approach this work of culture? And so that's the work we did, starting almost 8 years ago now, beginning culture of good in an organization. As both of you know, I'm sure Melanie knows as well, having heard me speak a couple of times, within a company that had over 2,000 employees at the time here in the States. They were in 35 states, retail locations. Very ironically, now looking back, it was very remote work. So it was in small rural communities, small towns, with maybe 2 or 3 employees that worked in a store by themselves, with many times no connection to other stores around the area. Very spread out is what I'm saying. So when you have that decentralized culture, the tricky part that we didn't know what we were stepping into is how do you engage everyone across the board, making them, or giving them that sense that they're a part of something bigger, and also giving them that sense of fulfillment in their everyday work, as well as connecting that type of work and culture work to the very strategy of the organization. So what are the goals, I would ask, for 2021? What initiatives are already in place? And then what is your strategy for culture? What's your people strategy? And as we started building the culture of good within that organization, we found that some of the things that we did not work well at all. As a matter of fact, I would say they failed. An instance of that was trying to spread a message out to all the stores that we're launching this culture of good, and we came up this bright idea that I've spoke with John about, of sending out fortune cookies to all the stores with a little custom messaging within, and just I think we sent out 500,000 cookies out to all the stores so they could send them out to their customers and get this momentum going. It didn't work very well. The fortune cookies ended up becoming shipping peanuts, the packaging, so that they could return returned some of the equipment to the manufacturer. It was just half of them were eaten by the employees. It was just a big mess. So we did some things that were kind of out of the box, which is certainly what I really enjoy doing. But we also found things that were very successful along the way and very engaging. And it took time. It took time to learn what some of that was. And we also brought in organizational psychologists within the company to really dive into the dynamics of culture of good that worked really well, and gaining or really mining that information from the employees, not just through surveys, but also through face-to-face interviewing of hundreds of the employees. Took a lot of time. We have a new admission into here. George is popping in. All right, he's here. Welcome, George. We have someone else from the States here. We've been through the conversation on politics and everything else, so we're right into talking about this idea of the cohort. So again, we built the solution. We built this this company, Culture of Good, and began working with companies that we had relationship with, and also companies that started to hear about the success of our organization within those companies and how we were partnering with them. In that process, ironically, John's on here. John gets a hold of me, hears that I'm leading Culture of Good, has this culture conference. I go up and speak, and then all of a sudden it's a snowball effect, and I'm traveling throughout Canada and through the States. And he wasn't the first time I did a keynote, but that was really where a lot of the effort with Culture of Good went. Was me going out as the brand and talking about the culture of good. And I never really saw myself as a consultant type. Really the definition of what we consider to be a consultant, I'm sure there's a lot of ideas rolling around in our heads on what that kind of relationship looks like. But what I realized is when we were starting to work with these companies, what was the most effective way of doing that wasn't just simply saying, all right, for this amount of money, you have this solution, do it yourself, and let us know how it's going. It was far more effective and quite frankly, efficient to be able to go in and say, we want to work with you as you're going through this, this solution, for lack of a better term, and implementing the steps of building a culture of good throughout the organization over 12 months, and having touch points to be able to do so, and me consulting with what we would call a sponsor, one sponsor within the organization, and the team, culture team, that was sized dependent upon the size of the organization, so they'd have a culture team. But I'd work directly with that sponsor. And so through quarantine, all of my keynotes, just to be completely transparent, all of my keynotes either became virtual or non-existent. I was laughing because one of my keynotes was moved into March of 2022. And so now I told them on my website, I'm going to put on there that I'm being booked out 1.5 years in advance, right? Because it's quite some time before I see any of that starting to gain momentum again. And I realized that now's the opportunity through 2021 to not just partner with large organizations. So in 2019, moving into this year, the majority of the organizations, companies that we were working with were quite large. So very similar to where we launched Culture of Good. So you're talking 3 billion plus a year type companies. That type of engagement looks quite different. And we're a small boutique type culture consultancy. And so taking on a organization that has 3,000 employees and in different actual countries. It was a global company, one of them. Takes a lot of time and effort for the type of business that we are. What our goal is now is to find 10 companies that we'll work directly with, 10 organizations that we'll work directly with in 2021 to help build a culture of good within their organization. And we'll get into how that works. But very similar to the work that we've done, but scaling it to small and medium size businesses. And so that's really where we are right now, rather than taking on one or two large conglomerate type groups, working with 10 and me directly working with those organizations. So I would come on to that team essentially, and we would work, I would be part of the culture team within the organization, and work with the sponsor and work with the team, and we would limit that amount of companies to 10. So let me share a little bit about what Culture of Good does in terms of how it engages with the organization, and what that's going to look like, what the cohort's going to look like, and then we'll discuss a little bit more about why that matters to your business or to the businesses that you're working with. If you have the potential of being able to refer other companies to us, that's wonderful as well. So we're looking at the Culture of Good takes companies through 3 phases over a course of a year. The first phase is after working directly with the sponsor who champions the culture and building the culture team. The first phase that we take the organization through is what we call Find Your Cause. So a lot of companies, nonprofits, have a mission. They have some good that they do in the world. They, and that's all over the place. Every company I talk to has a different instance of what that looks like. I remember speaking in Arizona recently, and no, actually it was in Texas, and a gentleman came up and he said, look, we're, family-owned business. We love Culture of Good. We love what you're doing, because up to this point, employees are coming to us with what they're passionate about and what they care about, and we just keep giving. But we don't know whether what we're doing is working. There's no strategy behind it. We feel like it's the right thing to do to support what our employees are passionate about. But we can't just keep giving money away, right? Like we can, if we have 200 employees, 200 people's passions coming to us and saying, can you sponsor my kid's baseball team? Can you, or hockey team, or, can you help support this local hospital? This is where I volunteer. And so there's a lot of different instances of leaders that are saying, we want to do good. We have a heart to do this. It's in the soul of our company and the mission. We just need a strategy behind it. And part of the strategy we work with the company is really identifying a main cause. So we can have several different areas of outreach and doing good through the Culture of Good. But we want to find the main mission of the business. So we start all the way back to why the company was founded, what were the principles that it was founded on, what are the values that it was founded on, what are the current values, what good has the company done up to this point, what does that look like, do you have a strategy, is there a consistent cadence of how this is lived out among the employees and the customers. And so it's what we do is get behind the work that's already being done as an organization, and we put a strategy behind it, a methodology that's very predictable, and it's proven to work. And so the first phase is finding cause. So the cause is something that speaks to the mission and the heart of the business, but it's also directly aligned with the core competency of what the business does on a daily basis, right? And so it's not far off from what the business does in terms of its products, its solutions, its services. We look to find an alignment. So we're not just randomly, looking up a list of areas of good that can be done by a company and sticking our finger on one of them and saying, yeah, this would be a good one. We really want to find some alignment. And once that alignment is found, Then there's commitment through the Find Your Cause process, where the organization then makes a quarterly commitment to live up to doing good based on that. So rather than having it as kind of a once a year going out and doing good, we really want to create a quarterly commitment where the employees and the customers can get behind some of this work. And it doesn't necessarily have to take away from the employees' everyday work. Again, we're trying to find alignment there where the employees can get involved in doing good. And they're able to connect the mission and the purpose of the organization to their everyday activities and the work that they're doing. And so that's the work that we do in the first phase of building a culture of good. Normally that phase takes anywhere up to 4 to 6 months. Again, this is very self-paced. It depends upon the size of the organization. It shouldn't take any more than 6 months to do that. There's some overlap with the second phase that usually starts in month 5. And so that phase is where we introduce the 5 promises. The 5 promises of the organization of culture of good as we're building it is really what we would say are healthy indicators of the organization is building a culture of good when we start to see more and more of these 5. And these promises are made by the organization, the leadership, to the employees, and then the employees make those promises then to the customers and the community. This allows for culture of good as we're building it to not only have a focus of external impact where we're going into local community and doing good, but also has that internal component. So when we talk about the culture of good having a positive impact on the workplace and the world, that's what we're saying. So there's the internal component of the peer-to-peer relationship. We can't just say culture of good is good for the community. We're also saying, how is it good for each other, employees? How is it good for the employee-customer relationship? And then obviously the organization and the business, and how is it in terms of building good for the relationship to the community, so that there's that internal and external component. Really quickly, I'll share that the 5 promises are: we're going to care about people in the world around us. We're going to drive the business to greater success so that we can do more good in the world. We're going to inspire others to do good with us. We're going to connect with those around us. And we're also going to be authentic in our words and actions. As part of the second phase of the 5 promises, we also introduce observable behaviors. We have some prescriptive behaviors that are very measurable and are able to be measured in 3 different areas of the business: individually, team, and also organizationally. So how are we living up to those 5 promises as an organization? How are we living up to them as a team? And then you as an employee individually, how would you measure whether you're living up to those? And certainly there's, there's a lot of work that's done around that, because initially we measure based on subjective measurements, so very feeling based. But then we move into the observable behaviors, and we can use the prescriptive ones that we have, or we work with the executive team, with your leadership team, your culture team, to identify what are the observable behaviors that we want to see being lived up to by employees or teams in the organization, that we want to measure our health by. So the health of our culture is measured by these 5 indicators. If you were to go in and I were the physician, you were to sit down on the doctor's table and I would say, how are you doing in these 5 areas? This is how I would say, this is going to determine whether you're healthy or how healthy you are. Where are there opportunities for growth and for you to begin to exercise new opportunities to be able to develop that muscle within your organization so that you become healthier all around for all your stakeholders. And so that's the second phase. The third phase that we work with the organization is really the sustainability of it. And that has to do with commitments to do the ongoing quarterly good that we do in the community, or for the community, for the world, that's based on that cause that we found in phase 1. And then the second phase, we have the 5 promises, and then the sustainability, the third phase, is really the ongoing commitment and the work to continue building and looking for other areas within the organization that we can implement and inject culture of good within. Everything from how we're interviewing employees, how we're onboarding, the training and development, the ongoing development, going on your website, and can I, within a few short moments, really see the mission in the heart of your organization? Do I see employees actively involved in the culture and customers and testimonies, and looking at every little detail of the organization? So there's ongoing sustainability work, as well as continuing to commit to measure based on the 5 promises within the organization. I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm assuming there might be a question or two. Is there anything that stands out that any of you would like to mention, anything or have a question around so far?
Well, I think the 5 promises, care about people, drive business to greater success, inspire others, connect with community, authentic in your words and actions. I think for the private sector is to identify what's that focus going to be, because we have like 10 things we're trying to do good in. And where at the private sector, you're saying we're going to promote literacy, for example.
Yes.
So every quarter, we're going to demonstrate that we're connecting and showing literacy.
Sure.
For a library and doing a culture of good, I'm just wondering how do you translate that to doing a quarterly measure?
Yeah, so what we do is we have 3 areas of a quarterly effort toward that. One is called Big Good, Our Good, and then My Good, right? And so the organization commits to doing some good collectively together, just once a quarter. So if it's promoting literacy, that after the first workshop could potentially be the cause, right? It just makes sense. Yeah. So all of this it's very common sense, but then how do you execute on it, right? So promoting literacy is a great example within a library. And so we would have Big Good, where collectively employees and their leaders collectively do some form of promoting literacy together as an entire enterprise, depending on the size of your organization, right? And so how many employees do you have? Are you working within one library, or is it a system of libraries?
We're under 100.
Under 100? Okay.
Yeah.
So under 100 employees?
Small system.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Which is great. So under 100 employees actively involved in doing some form of good. If it's for 4 hours once a quarter where everybody collectively does an event, we would call that a Big Good event. And that is something that aligns right into their everyday work. It's not something that you would feel, okay, we're going to have all these employees doing this good and promoting literacy, but what about their work? This is a great example of how you can do this work as part of their work, right? And so we have the Big Good, and then we have Our Good. And so what we would do with Our Good is we would look at the organization and work with you if you were the culture sponsor, the champion of this. And we would say, all right, how can we divide up the employees as teams? So do you have, teams that based on the time that they work, or based on the area of the business of the library that they're focused on, if it's, HR, if it's working directly with customers, or so we look at different dynamics, and we divide up those 100 employees into smaller groups, hopefully no more than 15 to 20 in each one of those groups. And that's Our Good. And what they determine to do is they look as a group. So the Big Good is very prescriptive. I would work with the top leadership team, executive team, whoever those executives are, leaders, and say, what can we commit to as an organization on a quarterly basis that we know the employees are going to get behind, but it's more prescriptive. And then when we get to the Our Good, we're looking at far more autonomy in choosing how they want to get involved in their local community to promote literacy. So as a big good, it would be something that potentially could be something that's at the library, right? Where we're encouraging people to come in, or now because of social distancing, I know our library here downtown, I just called them yesterday. That's going to be my new co-working space, because I can't keep working in this little condominium for the next year, which looks like it could be a potential. So I called the library, and it's something that I'm going to start working there. But the our good then becomes where maybe that group, can practice some social distancing, put on a mask, whatever it is, but also go and promote literacy in other ways. Maybe they go into a local school if they're allowed to do so. That the dynamic of what we're facing with the quarantine makes that a little trickier of a conversation, but we figure it out. And so they as a group then on a quarterly basis then go and do good that promotes that literacy in teaching that. And then there's the my good, and that's where we get to the individual. We start with the big good because we learned that in starting with the my good, that each individual employee might say, yeah, I want to go volunteer and get involved. But the momentum of actually building a culture of good worked far better by having a big good event first, and then introducing our good, where teams had the autonomy to choose how they were going to give back. And then the my good, where each employee may say, all right, I love promoting literacy. Obviously, that's why I got involved in a library. But I also really love dogs, and I want to go and I want to volunteer at a local animal shelter. And then what we would say as an organization is, all right, we've got the big good and our good locked in. We want to support you going and volunteering with where you're most passionate about. So almost full autonomy, as long as it's not supporting a political campaign or some type of religious initiative, and it's more about just doing good. And it's supporting a local charity or nonprofit. That's what we would support the individual going and doing. So that's more kind of the paid PTO type work, where you give them on hours where there's not going to be a lot of customers, where it's they'll have some free time, maybe a Thursday morning, they want to go and volunteer for 4 hours each quarter. So you have the my good. So that's how we structure that. That's kind of the structure of how that works. And it worked really well. Again, when we started with my good, and that did not work. So that was something that we see in most organizations. They give employees opportunities to volunteer, and then they randomly say, we have this day of giving back. Here's a sign-up sheet. 12 people sign up, 3 people show up. So this is building, and it's building consistently. And it's that consistent cadence and predictability of, we know every single year, each quarter, we're going to do this type of good, and it's going to support education and literacy, however you decide to do that. And then we also have the our good, so our team is consistently talking about it, and that leads to individuals just organically saying, yeah, this is what I'm passionate about, and I want to get involved.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we've talked about the 3 phases, the 10 steps very quickly. I'm going to pull them up because I don't have them memorized, but I'll read them through. So I'll share what we do in terms of going through for the 12 months. We go through 10 steps. You'll notice some of our solutions are called 9 steps. And the reason that there's more than 9 steps in this process is this is more consulting, and it goes beyond the 9 months. So each one of these steps takes about a month. So we'd introduce the culture of good to the leadership team. We would work with you, whoever your sponsor is, to introduce the culture of good, the concepts behind it, and prepare them for the Find Their Cause workshop, right? The second step, we complete the Find Your Cause workshop with the leadership team. We talked about that. The third phase then is taking what we gained from that workshop and getting buy-in from key stakeholders for the cause and the culture of good in the third step. So depending on the organization and your stakeholders. You'll have various milestones throughout that phase or throughout that step. The fourth step then is forming teams to build a culture of good in the organization. So this is where we work with you as a sponsor to build your culture team. And depending on the size of the organization, we may need to have 3 different types of teams. When we work with a larger organization, we'll have an execution team, we'll have a events team, and then we'll have a storytelling team. Those 3 can be combined into one team if it were you and we had 6 to 8 others that could take on all of those roles and form one culture team. We would do that in step 4. Step 5 is when we introduce the 5 promises to the leadership and the support teams. Step 6, in the 6 months, we plan and prepare for the organization's first big good event. And I'll send this document to you in case you're wanting it, so you can read through. And then there's a high-level description of what that step means and what we do, what the objectives are. So that's step 6. So we plan and prepare for the organization's first big good event. Step 7 is we launch the big good event and shift the focus over to the 5 promises rollout, right? So the leadership team has already been introduced to the 5 promises, and then we roll the 5 promises out to all the employees in step 8. In step 9, we complete the organizational wide rollout of the 5 promises by doing a workshop. So in step 8, we're planning that. We're working with the managers to organize around it. In step 9, then we roll out the actual workshop. And that workshop, I train the sponsor to do, or the sponsor selects someone within the culture team to conduct the workshop. And if we don't have anyone within the organization, we'll work with, and I can do that workshop virtually with the team as well. So it takes some of the pressure off if there's no one that can facilitate. And then step 10 is all about the sustaining. So that leads into that 3rd phase. So that's why we're looking at this taking 10 to 12 months, because then we get into the sustain phase. But those are the 10 steps, and I'll send you that document. We only have a few minutes left on this. Let me share this really quick. There is cost to this, right? so it's not free. I'll share what we would normally charge for this type of work that we were doing with the organizations that we had was upwards to over $100,000 a year. What we've priced this cohort to be is $2,000 a month. And so for $2,000 a month, you get me and all of our solutions and everything. Why this makes sense to us is because this allows us to not just work with 1 or 2 major, huge companies in a year with the size that we are. It allows us to engage with upwards to 10 or even additional beyond that. We have strategic partners that are fully trained. These first 10 will be directly worked with by me. So that will be my partnership. Anything beyond that 10 then will have other strategic partners along with myself that will work directly with those organizations. So that's the cost. We want to launch in January. We have 2 companies, organizations that are already semi on board. I'm meeting with their leadership team. So if this is something, Melanie or John, you might have organizations, maybe your company, library, or whatever you're doing. If you want me to get on a call and say, I might have a few other leaders get on because I don't want to pitch this to them. I believe in it. I know this is going to work. It's proven it's going to be very helpful to build our culture. But are you able to do that? That's what I'm doing. So November 6th, I have a couple of those companies that said, hey, can you get in front of the leadership team and talk a little bit more about this so it makes sense to them as well? I can certainly do that. So that's what the cohort looks like. Again, there's going to be 10. And beyond that, then we would certainly be able to scale that. And that's why we're doing this, because we want to see more companies, and we believe that it's important to not just engage with a company that has, 3,000 employees, but our heart and the work that we do is very grassroots. It feels very grassroots. It doesn't feel very corporate. It's the same nonprofit kind of feel that I had leading a church or a missions group or anything. I mean, it really feels connected to the employees and the customers, and that's the type of culture that we want to build. So there's a lot more to this. I know we're out of time. So for maybe the next couple minutes, does anyone have any questions about any of that? The steps or the money or any of that at all?
I do wonder if you frame this as sort of a cohort of 10 organizations. Is there a plan for there to be any sort of contact or collaboration among those 10?
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. So this is what, okay. So every single month, what I would do is, say you two were 2 of the companies, right? 2 of the sponsors. The other 8, then I would get on a monthly, obviously virtual. We would get on a Zoom every single month, and we would go. I would go through step by step the objectives, for that step for that month. So yeah, there'll be a group, a community of 10, and that's how we'll have that set up. And I'll work directly with the 10. So shared experiences, best practices, all that'll be shared among the team. And so once a month, I'll get on with the sponsors at the end of the month so that they're prepared and equipped to launch the next step. So we've hit all of our milestones and we've moved on. And then, we have the challenge of working collectively together. So if one is kind of behind, working with them to help them, catch up to the rest of the team. And not only will I get on once a month for the cohort, but I also want to get on individually with your team, right? So if you have the culture team once a month, I'll get on with the culture team, and we'll do that at the first of the month. So it'll be the last week of the month, I'll get on with the cohort, and the first week of the month, I'll get on with the culture team. And we'll spend an hour or 2 working with the team to ensure that each person knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and the work is completely delegated. Everything's fully baked. The videos are there, the documents are there. Sometimes it's difficult to know who needs to know what, who needs to be doing what. And so that's what I mean by me being on the culture team. We'll work collectively together to build the culture of good.
Yeah, and it just seems to me in the current environment, there's a real value to, rubbing shoulders and sharing ideas with other folk who are on the same journey, because we're all kind of, to some extent, navigating a fairly uncertain terrain. So that's good to know. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, should have brought that up when I said cohort. Yeah. Thank you, John. Melanie, do you have any questions or?
No, the approach makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
And it seems like in chunks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that we consider doing for those organizations that might say, well, we won't commit for an entire year, but we'll make a commitment. But, when we set this up, obviously it's a year commitment. But within that contract, you can decide to say this just isn't working for us. I don't have any problems with someone saying that. I really 99.9% of me says we'll never face that. But if there's some hesitancy to say a year is a long commitment for this, like I said, within the contract, there's obviously within a certain amount of 30 days letting us know, you can terminate contract at that point. It's no big deal. So I like the chunks and that's how my mind works. I need to know this month we're doing this. Here's the objectives. Here's what needs to be delegated. Here's what needs to happen. Who needs to watch this video? Who needs to receive this document? We take the guesswork out of all of that. George, you're being awfully quiet.
I would say that I would know a little bit.
Yeah. George is one of our strategic partners.
Yeah. Yeah, the only question you already answered was just kind of the longevity. I know some people get committed; they're scared of a 10-month, $2,000 commitment, especially with the uncertainty of what could happen if something worse happened with this pandemic. So I think those are answers, that a lot of people would have. Is what does that look like on a monthly basis, and how's that payment, done? Is it done on the first 15th at the end of the month? Is it previous? Yeah, just a bunch of what ifs, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are great questions. I don't really have an answer for whether payment. I mean, what we would do is we would just send an invoice out monthly, or we could do one invoice if we wanted to do that. But we could do a monthly. I would say it'd be more monthly than a full year.
Yeah.
So total cost would be the 12 months at $2,000 a month is what that would be. But it would be paid on a monthly basis.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know about the 1st and 15th yet. haven't got that deep into it just yet.
Yeah. And what does the portfolio look like for a client in regards to the material? Is it digital? Is it just documents via email?
Yeah, it's digital. So everything lives on a platform called Podia. So each one of the steps has a certain amount of videos and documents in each step. And so we would log in, or we would have the sponsor log in to Podia, to our platform, and download the documents. So everything's digital. But those documents are PDFs because some of them need to be sent off to other employees, need to prep for like a workshop or whatever it is. So so we would log in and we would go through, and secondly, not only is there that, but there's also a sponsored journal, which is really the playbook. So it gives every single step, every single objective, every video and document that needs to be read. That's what we built. Is like if you found that journal on an island and needed to build a culture of good, you could do it without any help from our end. It can be done that way. But certainly doing it as a cohort, as John mentioned, having a group of people collectively doing this together, as well as me working directly with the team is far more effective and efficient. And so there is a journal that comes along with this as well. There's additional video series, our 5 promises videos, there's 9-step videos, all of that content is a part of this. So there's not any like hidden things. If you jump in and there's more for this, there's none of that. It's all video and document, as well as the journal. So that's the content. If you have, I know we're out of time here, past time. So to honor your time, if you have any other questions, reach out to me. I know, John, you've I'm sure got a book. Melanie, do you want me to send you one of my books, Build a Culture of Good? You're muted, so point.
Sure,
okay.
That would be great. Do you want me to email you my I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah, and then I do have extra books for teams. So do you have a few leaders at the library that you'd like to hand a book to as well?
Well, I'm also thinking about not just the library, but whether or not it should be the municipality.
Yeah.
I'll give that some thought and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Because I think that, the library can't be doing this in isolation. It would be better if we're an arm's length organization within the municipality, but it's nicer when you have those teams.
That would be tremendous.
Yeah, and actually Melanie's just up the road from me. I'm based in Hamilton, so we're the sort of adjoining.
Oh, that's cool.
Whatever region, I guess, right?
Golden Horseshoe.
Let's go. Yeah. Let's do some good together somehow.
Yeah.
Even if the municipality says, well, the timing is not well right now, we have worked within smaller sections or segments of organizations. I think it would work the same way as well. So if they see, growth and connection and working within the library, the municipality might say, hey, let's bring this in fully throughout. So Yeah.
And you were up here talking to Peel, weren't you? Wasn't that time we met at the airport? Weren't you speaking to Peel? Was it Peel region? I believe.
I
It was a
don't
couple of
think
years ago now. You may
Yeah.
not recall. Yeah, we met at the airport.
I remember you in Mississauga because they lost your luggage and you had to rush out to get new
Oh, geez,
clothes.
those checkered pants. I still have them. Yeah, everybody loves them. That was great. I love Mississauga. That was a tremendous time. Yeah. I would love, to be a part of this. Anything that we can do collectively together, I'd love to be a part of it. So just obviously let me know. You guys all know my heart and why I'm doing this, because you've heard it before. So any way that we can partner, I'm game for sure. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Laura.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Great to see you all. Have
Take
a
care.
good rest of the week. Take care.
Take care.
All right, bye.
Take care. Keep safe. Bye.